My mother-in-law kicked me out of the house and my husband snatched my purse. They pointed towards a big hotel and told me, maybe they'll let you in as a homeless person. I laughed and went inside. They turned pale when the hotel manager welcomed me with open arms. My husband has always been nothing more than a little mama's boy, but the one thing I did not expect was for his mom to just absolutely go irate on me. She was looking through my purse. First of all, that's a big invasion of privacy. I mean, who does that? But then she found money and just assumed I was stealing it because she didn't even know I had a job. She thought I was a stay-at-home wife, but I'm the breadwinner. So, they tried to kick me out of my house for stealing their own money. I walked across the street to the hotel, and they were super confused when the manager of the hotel welcomed me with open arms. It's because I work there. You want to know what my mother-in-law said after that? This is a throwaway account that I made solely for the purpose of lurking on here and hopefully finding people who have been through similar experiences and have already shared them on the internet for people to cast judgment on. I've exhausted every post even mildly similar to what I'm going through, and while I've learned a lot, I'm still so unsure. It's like all my feelings are fighting, so I decided that since this account is anonymous anyway, the only thing that's going to get me accurate advice on my situation is to share my story with all of you. I'm 27, female, and I think my husband has been cheating on me. Unfortunately, I'm completely dependent on him and his parents and have no way of getting out. I don't know what to do. I'll try to break this down into a few sections so I can properly structure my thoughts and avoid posting a wall of text on here. Firstly, why do I think my husband is cheating? I want to clarify that I'm not someone to jump to conclusions. I like to believe that I take everything into account and have very measured responses. Considering my husband Nathan has never been the best at communicating his thoughts and expectations, I've had to learn to read between the lines and always assume I don't have all the information available. I don't think I overreact to things, and I've always given him a great deal of trust. Being married for as long as we've been, 9 years in November, baby, I'd like to think I know his behavior pretty well, and I know what's normal and what's not. Considering he was in the military when we first got married, he was discharged due to an injury a few years back. Now, I'm not just crying cheater because he's been out more than usual. I don't assume he's being unfaithful whenever he's out of my line of sight. There are multiple reasons, multiple factors, that led to me reaching this conclusion. The first is the fact that he's been out more often lately. When he bothers to provide an explanation, he says he's been working late. He's a real estate agent, so his hours have always been a little all over the place. At first, I didn't take much notice until he started coming home later and later. He was simply claiming that he was out for work. He's also constantly on his phone now. I know that sounds super nitpicky, but he just claims he's on his phone for work, even though he has a work phone. Lately, he's been on his personal phone pretty much all the time, constantly texting. A few weeks ago, I'm almost certain I saw him on Snapchat, which he's never used before, to my knowledge. I can't imagine any work talk is being done through Snapchat. There have been a few other signs, like him smelling like a distinctly feminine perfume sometimes or just looking a little more mussed up than he should be when he gets home. I don't know how credible those are, but I know something isn't right. In my heart, I know he's been unfaithful and is probably still stepping out on this marriage, so what do I want to do? Without any other insights into my marriage, you might be wondering why I haven't just spoken to him or left. I don't think speaking to him would result in anything other than more grief for me. He's never been the type to take any problems, no matter how gently I bring them up, as anything but an attack. The moment I bring this up, I know he'll turn it into me not trusting him enough, and I'll just end up feeling guilty and having to make it up to him. It's happened before, not with infidelity specifically, but with other issues. I never realized it at the time, but I know now that if I approach him with my concerns, I'll end up apologizing. So, I'm left with no other option, leaving. Before you accuse me of being too hasty or drastic for wanting to jump ship at the first sign of a problem, let me tell you more about my marriage. I got married when I was 18, the very same year I graduated high school. Nathan was 22. He was a sailor in the Navy, and he completely swept me off my feet. I came from, well, not much. My father walked out on my mother when I was a freshman in high school, and my mother pretty much checked out on life for the 3 years after that before she passed away. By the time I turned 18, I was all alone in this world. Then I met Nathan, and within 6 months of meeting him, I was signing my name on a piece of paper declaring myself his wife. He told me that he didn't like the idea of dragging me around to wherever he was stationed, even though I would have been willing to follow him to the ends of the earth at that point. He said I'd had enough instability in my life already, and he wanted me to have a proper home and family. So, we moved in with his parents right after we said I do, and then he was off on deployment. I never complained. I was just so taken aback that this man, who had no obligation to me, was trying to give me the stable family life I'd never had. Like Nathan, his father had served in the Navy, so it was a very stern household that believed in traditional family values. The man was the breadwinner, and the woman was the homemaker, simple. When Nathan and I tied the knot, his mother essentially began training me to take over as the homemaker. I was 18, barely an adult, and so excited to finally have a real, functioning family of my own that I just did whatever was expected of me. I threw myself into being the best homemaker I could be. I never questioned a word they said, so those expectations kept piling up. I was expected to want nothing more than the life of the perfect little wife. I'd stay home, cook, clean, and look after my in-laws. And for the past 9 years, I've done nothing but that. Early on, I was discouraged from leaving the house alone since Nathan was deployed, and we lived in the middle of the city. So, I stopped leaving the house, even when he came home and started working as a real estate agent. I never left. Whatever friendships I had melted away within the first couple of years, and Nathan and his parents became my whole universe. Their traditional family values translated into me never talking back, never disagreeing, only dressing a certain way, and having no opinions that weren't my husband's. Realizing all of this was a slow process, one that began a few months ago when I first suspected that he was cheating. In a way, I've always known that the way they've treated me over the years is simply not okay, but they're the only people I have. I never wanted to accept it. The worst realization I've had is knowing that if I wanted to leave, I wouldn't be able to. I have no one else. I have no education, no income, no experience, and I'm nearly 30 with nothing but a high school diploma and a blank resume. Even going through available jobs in the city left me more hopeless than not. I'm not qualified for anything, and I don't even have any savings to tide me over while I figure things out. I want to start off by thanking everyone who commented and reached out after my post last month. I'm not sure how to link it here, but you can find it on my profile. It's my only other post on this account. I really appreciate that so many of you were so kind and genuine in your support and advice. It means so much more to me than I can express right now. After I posted here, I spent a few hours just panicking about the fact that someone might find my original post and link it to me somehow, and I debated deleting the whole thing so many times that night. Then the next day, my mother-in-law's side of the family came to visit, and I got so caught up in hosting that I completely forgot about the post until the end of the week. By then, plenty of lovely people had DM'd me, and some had left comments. I read through every single one and took their advice to heart. I did look up a women's shelter that operates locally, but when I called, they didn't answer, and then I never got around to calling back. However, I did read up on a whole host of other things, similar experiences, and things like that on their website, so I do feel like I gained something from them. Shortly after, I read a blog post on their website about a woman who turned her life around after leaving an unhealthy marriage by taking a job as a cleaner. I was on my way home after dropping my mother-in-law off at her social club. I was passing a hotel not too far from home when I saw they had posted a help wanted sign. Sending my mother-in-law to wherever she wanted to go and picking her up were pretty much the only times I left the house, so seeing that sign was really a stroke of luck. I decided not to ignore it. I walked in and asked about the job vacancy, and to my luck, they were short-staffed. The person at the counter, who I spoke to, was actually the manager of the hotel. I told her as much as I was willing to tell a stranger in a professional setting, pretty much that I really needed a job and that I had no qualifications. I really think that God was on my side that day because she decided to take a chance on me. She said she was willing to take me in as a housekeeper, even though I couldn't work that many hours, and was willing to work around whatever schedule I gave her. I don't know if she somehow sensed how badly I needed it, if it was some sort of women's intuition, but she took a chance on me. I started 2 days ago, and after sending my mother-in-law to her social club, I drove home and then walked to the hotel. It's not too far, and I don't want anyone to come home and find the car gone. Plus, I really don't mind the walk. At the end of this week, I'll be collecting my first ever paycheck. Maybe this isn't some huge achievement worth praise, but it's progress, and I will never stop thanking God for this opportunity. So I'm in shock. I thought things were going well. I thought I was finally getting my life together and taking steps toward earning real independence. I thought things were getting better. Part of me thinks I should have been more careful, but an overwhelming majority of my head is telling me I never should have done any of this to begin with. I thought I wanted freedom, in whatever form it came, and instead, I'm worse off now than I've ever been. 3 weeks ago, I started working as a housekeeper. I was on top of the world when I made the last update, and I thought I had it all figured out. I'd go to work when everyone was gone, be home before anyone else, like I never even left. It worked, until it didn't. Tonight, we went out to celebrate my father-in-law getting a really great piece written about him in the local news. After leaving the Navy, he built himself up as a politician in our small town, and he's been doing really well these last few years. The latest piece about him was just the cherry on top of what's been a good year for him. Everyone was in really high spirits after dinner. He ended up getting a call from a few of his friends and colleagues, inviting him out, so it was just me, Nathan, and his mother. I was carrying my purse, which my mother-in-law had apparently slipped her phone into at some point while we were at the restaurant. When we were nearly home, she searched my bag to get her phone and instead pulled out my wages for the week. I'd slipped them in there earlier in the day and had completely forgotten to take them out while rushing to get ready for dinner. Obviously, she wanted to know where I had gotten the money. I froze. When I did, she came to her own conclusion. She told Nathan to stop the car, and he pulled over on the side of the street. She told him that I'd been stealing. Obviously, I denied stealing from my own family. I said I earned the money. I don't know why I expected them to believe me. As far as they knew, I didn't have a job. I never even left the house. Where would I have gotten the money if not from them? Again and again, they accused me of stealing, and again, I denied it. But they didn't believe me. Then Nathan just reached across me and threw the passenger door open, telling me to get out. Again, I just froze, but this time he didn't even have the patience to argue. He walked to my side, pulled me out of the car, and I was left standing there, holding my bag, frozen on the sidewalk. He snatched my purse from my hands and got back in the car. My mother-in-law just rolled down the window, pointed at the building behind us, and said, "Thieves deserve to live on the streets, but maybe if you don't tell them, they'll let you in as a homeless person for the night." I turned around, and the building right behind us was the hotel, the same one where I had gotten the money. I don't know what came over me. I was just so overwhelmed that a laugh burst out of me. It wasn't a happy sound, just disbelief, I think. I didn't know what to think or how I was supposed to react, so I just walked into the hotel. By some miracle, the same manager who had hired me was at the counter again. She's the same woman who had spent the last 3 weeks checking in on me, sensing there was something about my situation I wasn't sharing. When I walked in, shell-shocked, with nothing but the clothes on my back, she took one look at me, hugged me, and led me into the back room. Thank goodness I still had my phone, at least. Update 2. I figured I owed everyone who's been commenting and DMing me out of concern an update. I don't have much to say, but I'll just answer the questions that have been asked and tell you what's happened in the last few days. After my husband and mother-in-law kicked me out, Heather, the hotel manager, took me into the back room and comforted me until my brain was organized enough to explain. I told her everything. Maybe I crossed some unprofessional line that an employee shouldn't cross with their manager, but at that moment, I just needed someone, and Heather was there. She listened. Once I was done and calmed down enough to start feeling some shame for unloading all of that on her, she told me she was sorry I'd been going through all of it. I couldn't believe it. I was inconveniencing a woman I'd known for all of 3 weeks, not to mention how unprofessional the whole situation was, and yet she offered me understanding. She said she had known there was more to my story since the day I came looking for a job and that she would never turn her back on a woman she could help. So, she told me that she's been there, and she's seen the looks on Nathan and my mother-in-law's faces when she welcomed me with open arms. Apparently, they had gone stark white and driven away in a rush. She said they ran like they were guilty, and she wasn't going to punish me for whatever they had done. She went above and beyond for me, gave me a room to stay in, sent up some hot chocolate, and even provided a spare charger for my phone. That's where I wrote my last update from. As if that wasn't already more than enough, she came and found me the next morning with documents proving that I'd been employed there, along with my payslips from the last 3 weeks, proving I had not stolen a thing. Then she drove me over to what used to be my home, my in-laws' house. I didn't want to drag her even further into my mess, so I went inside alone. I didn't know what my plan was or what I hoped to achieve, really. But Nathan took one look at the documents I showed him and told me that it didn't change anything, that I had gone behind his back, and it was going to take a lot for him to forgive me. His mother said the same, that I couldn't blame them for their reaction when I had broken their trust. At that moment, I knew if I gave in and begged for forgiveness, there would never be a way out again. I'd never get the chance to do this. I'm ashamed to say it, but it took everything in me to walk into our bedroom, grab a few of my things, and leave as quickly as I could. I'm so grateful, really, oh man, I'm so grateful. I took the advice of the commenter who told me to have important documents ready to go because those were the first things I grabbed. I'm even more grateful that when I walked out, practically running away from Nathan, who was screaming at me by that point, Heather was still waiting for me outside. So, here I am, sitting in a hotel room with one duffel bag and nothing else to my name. This is what I wanted, isn't it? Update. Hey guys, for 9 years, I learned how to listen to everything my husband and his parents told me. I learned to be a good wife, a beautiful daughter-in-law, and I learned to be a homemaker, maid, and errand girl. I learned that when they said something, it wasn't my place to argue. But when they threw me into the streets in the middle of the night, they lost the right to have me sit silently and accept their word as law. When they came into my place of work and berated the one person who ever bothered to stand up for me, the only person to offer me support in the last decade, I decided that I was done being passive. I was right at the end of my last update, this was what I wanted. I gained nothing by wallowing and letting them walk all over me. There were bruises on my arm from where Nathan had grabbed me to pull me out of the car. I hadn't even realized that I was hurt until later that night. When I did notice, I didn't even know what to do with that information. I figured it out when Nathan and my mother-in-law walked in, thinking they were going to have it out with Heather for sticking her nose where it doesn't belong and filling my head with a bunch of nonsense. When they threatened Heather's job with father-in-law's name, I took the CCTV footage from outside the hotel the night Nathan kicked me out, and, along with my bruised body, I went to the police. If they wanted to use father-in-law's position as a politician, I'd make sure their names were smudged and included in the reports. I didn't care if the police weren't able to do anything. I cared about one thing and one thing only, making a report and making sure they had the footage. I emailed both of those things to the same newspaper that had published the raving piece about my father-in-law, the one we were celebrating on the night this all went down in the first place. As of this morning, 2 local newspapers and 3 websites have published articles about a prominent local politician's wife and son abusing his daughter-in-law and throwing her into the streets, each article tearing down Nathan and his mother, who sat by and watched, and putting a microscope on father-in-law's family values. So far, I haven't had any contact with any of them, but I've received no less than 10 phone calls, each from my husband and in-laws, and a host of unknown numbers I assume belong to them or maybe journalists. I don't know if they've even tried to look for me. I don't plan on seeing any of them until I'm more settled, have a lawyer, and file for divorce. I'm currently sitting in Heather's apartment on the other side of town, far, far away from the people I once considered family. It's scary. I'm afraid of what the future holds, and I don't really know what the next step is going to be. It's scary, but it's better. It'll be better. I read a quote last night that said, "To build your new life, sometimes you have to burn your old one to the ground." It hurts, and it's not easy, but this needs to happen so that I can move forward, so I can finally build my own life. Edit. I never thought I'd actually come back to this post after all these months, but I just have to share the good news with you all, the people who gave me the strength to break free, to begin with. I just got promoted. Technically, it's not an effective immediately type of promotion or one that'll even take effect this year, but I'm now officially in management training. I'm still a housekeeper, which is apparently something I'm really good at after all those years of homemaking, but I'm now in the process of being trained to take over the housekeeping management role. Along with a decent bump in pay, I'm now a full-time salaried employee. Can you believe it? I'll also be working more closely with the head of housekeeping, who strongly suggested that I could be taking over her position when she retires in just a couple of years. Not only is that a real, respected position, but it also means she's actually seeing me as capable. On the other side of things, I'm also in the process of getting a divorce. I eventually did reach out to the women's shelter I called that one time, and they put me in contact with a divorce lawyer who specializes in cases similar to and worse than mine. If everything works out, Nathan will be footing the bill for my representation, and I'm not going to say anything more about the legal stuff because it's long and complicated and not as interesting as the other things that happened to Nathan. After the whole media circus, the police reports, and CCTV footage, all of that stirred up in a pot, my soon-to-be ex-father-in-law's office released a statement disowning all of Nathan's actions, going so far as to say that father-in-law is so appalled with his son's behavior that he cut him off. Considering Nathan still lived with him, cutting him off meant kicking him out. You'd think this wouldn't be a problem for an apparently booked and busy real estate agent, but evidently, he wasn't as booked as he told me, since he's now living with his maternal aunt and sending me texts lamenting how he's been left with nothing and how our vows said for richer or poorer that I was abandoning him in his time of need, yada yada. I've not responded, though I've been forwarding all his texts to my lawyer. His father has been fighting the press to rehabilitate his family values image, which isn't going well since his rivals pounced on the scandal immediately. And from Nathan's many text messages, I know that his father has banned his mother from going to any of her social clubs since he doesn't trust her not to gossip and make matters worse. From what I gather, she's as confined to the house as I once was, while Nathan is now completely banned from it.